Good morning. Welcome to Conversations Here and Now. My name is Naresh, and thank you for joining me. I would like to talk about a topic that's very important in Canada right now. It has been for a few years, and that is one of Alberta separating from Canada. Now, my podcast here, I'm talking to people who want to stay in Canada, who want Alberta to stay in Canada. This is not aimed at people who want to leave. I'm not going to change their minds. Their minds are set, okay? That's probably about 17 to 20% of the population of Alberta. There's about 60 to 75% that want to stay. But I would just like to bring up the arguments why Alberta should not separate from Canada. So, here are several strong reasons why Alberta should not separate from Canada. First one being, one of the most important, economic risk and uncertainty. Of that, first one is trade disruption. Alberta trades heavily with the rest of Canada, okay, and it does. Separation could impose tariffs, border delays, and legal complications under trade agreements like the USMCA. The USMCA was signed by Canada with the first Trump government. So you can well imagine all trade would have to be renegotiated, not only with Canada, but also with other countries. Because if you're your own country, you can't rely on the old trade deals. Everything has to be renegotiated, everything. And I would like you all to think about how much strength you would have just as Alberta. It's a small population, and how much strength you would have just as Alberta to negotiate these trade agreements. If you stay with Canada, then obviously you have more power as we all negotiate together. Loss of equalization and federal support. Though Alberta contributes more than it receives, federal support in times of crisis and need, wildfires, COVID-19, etc., have been significant. You don't know when an emergency like wildfire will come, and federal resources are available for all the people of Alberta to help out in those emergencies. We are here to help you out. We are here to help each other out in Canada. It will make it terrifically difficult for that to happen if Alberta were to totally separate and become its own country. Investor uncertainty, that's the next one. Political instability can deter investment, particularly in Alberta's vital energy sector. Now think about this, folks. If Alberta separates, would a company rather stay in Alberta and invest, or would they rather stay in Canada and invest? Where is economic certainty going to happen? Right? Think about it. Alberta is landlocked from all sides. It does not have ports. So it would have to negotiate everything with all other provinces and with Canada. So that brings economic uncertainty. So where would a company rather locate? In Alberta or in Canada? You see what I'm saying? Obviously, they will think twice about locating completely in Alberta because you have a small population. So that's all that falls under economic risk and uncertainty, because I think for a population of Alberta, it's really important to think about that. Companies might actually get up and leave Alberta. Yes, even with the oil, they might actually get up and leave and relocate in Canada, because that's where certainty is. Strength in numbers, always. Remember that, folks. Strength in numbers. And speaking of economic risk, we know what's happening and coming from down south with Donald Trump. He's making life terrifically difficult for us Canadians, and that's a big country. Do you really think he cares about anyone at all, let alone what a smaller country of Alberta would be? He doesn't care. He would nail you with tariffs. and other economic sanctions. He doesn't care about oil. Remember, he said, drill, baby, drill, for his own US. So he doesn't care. He's already said it outright. He doesn't need anything from Canada. Okay? So he's certainly not going to be jumping all over to try and do some deals with Alberta. He is not. He doesn't care. So I think that's a really important issue, economic risk and uncertainty. Next one is complex legal and constitutional barriers. Now, there's no clear path to secession. It's never happened before. Yes, Quebec held a referendum in 1995, and we were in Canada, as Canada, fortunate that people of Quebec chose to stay in Canada, even if it was a small margin, but they did choose to stay in Canada. And it has worked out really well. It appears to me it has worked out really well. So there's no clear path. So it's never happened before. A territory hasn't separated. The Canadian Constitution doesn't offer a simple exit clause. It doesn't. As shown with Quebec, any attempts to leave would require a negotiated agreement and constitutional amendments. And that's a very lengthy and difficult process that would most likely have to go through courts, etc., and governments as well. And that in itself would create a huge amount of uncertainty in Alberta. Again, it comes back to the economics. Would a company invest there, knowing that this is what's coming? And if it happens, Indigenous treaties and rights. Now, you know, all of you in Alberta should know that there are many Indigenous communities in Alberta, and they all oppose separation and have treaty rights with the Crown. The treaty rights are not with the province of Alberta, they're with the Crown. The province of Alberta cannot just willy-nilly ignore those treaty rights. Okay? This would create legal and territorial complications. They would have to be addressed, and from what I'm seeing right now, it doesn't look like the Indigenous communities are ready to let Alberta separate, because their lands are Crown lands. So they're not just going to up and let the government of Alberta separate without any issues. So that will end up in courts. So that's under complex legal and constitutional barriers. Next one I'm looking at is national and global reputation. So international recognition is not guaranteed, okay? Global powers, massive global powers, may not recognize Alberta as a sovereign state, especially if secession is contentious. If there's a fight happening between Alberta and Canada, okay? So they may not, even if they do recognize Alberta as a sovereign state, will international companies want to come into Alberta to invest? No, they will not. Companies do not like uncertainty. We're seeing that in the markets today with Trump's tariffs. Companies do not like uncertainty. They want certainty and a level, quiet field to do their business in. And this would create a tremendous amount of uncertainty in Alberta, in Canada as well. But more in Alberta, because you are smaller, you are landlocked, you have a smaller population. Okay, so you would have to come up with trade negotiations with almost every country in the world. EU, China, India, these are big countries and powerhouses. Does Alberta have the clout, the economic clout, to be able to come up with fair trade negotiations with these big companies, even US, even Canada itself? Again, strength in unity, strength in numbers. Damaged relationships. A break from Canada could strain relations with longtime allies and complicate access to diplomatic, military, and international trade partnerships. Diplomatic, of course. You become your own country, you'd have to set up diplomatic relations with every other country around the world. And they may want to, they may not want to. They may not recognize Alberta. I think, again, military, you'd have to set up your own military. You know, you have to set up your own Air Force, Navy, military. I don't know about Navy, you're landlocked, but Army, you'd have to set up your own police forces, right? So those are not things that are easily done. Is the other side that's going for separation thinking about that? I don't think so. Whatever their motives are, they have their motives. But I don't think overall they're thinking about the well-being of all of Alberta. They're thinking about their own well-being for their own reasons. They're not thinking about what all these things that I have mentioned so far. Okay? So, and again, international trade partnerships. It's hard. It's really difficult to come up with international trade partnerships. As you can see right now, the negotiations that are happening with the US and Donald Trump, very, very difficult negotiations. Does Alberta have the clout to be able to stand up to the US and Donald Trump? Even Canada is having a hard time, right? So you really need to think about that. Public division and social unrest, right? Widespread opposition. Polls consistently show most Albertans do not support separations, and that is 100% true. Pushing ahead could create intense regional and community division. Now, speaking of this, if you go to the website of Elections Alberta, there's a question there right now that suggests there's a petition going on that you would sign. Please. So the petition is to have a referendum on the question of whether Alberta should stay with Canada or should separate. In order for your Premier Danielle Smith to understand that the opposition to separation, you need to have this referendum so it can be shown to her that a huge majority of Albertans do not want to leave Canada. So please go to the website of Elections Alberta. The petition is there, and please sign it so you can have a referendum so this matter can just be done and finished. Then you guys and the rest of Canada and all of us together can focus on the well-being of Alberta and Canada. United we stand, divided we fall. Urban-rural split. Cities like Calgary and Edmonton are generally less supportive of separation than some rural regions. That would create further local tensions. Obviously, people in central Alberta, where like Calgary, Edmonton, big cities, they're not for separation. They're not. It's more in the rural areas. So obviously that would, if there was to be separation, that would create tensions in Alberta itself. So you have tensions where most Albertans do not want separation with people who do want separations. And if Alberta were to separate, then you would have tensions with the cities that don't want separation and with the rural regions that do. You can't have cities separating into its own countries. You can't have a country of Calgary or Edmonton or rural Alberta. It would, tremendous amount of chaos would occur there, okay? Practical governance issues. Now, currency and central banking. This is the fifth one, practical governance issues. Alberta would need to create its own central bank or negotiate use of the Canadian dollar with no guarantee of favorable terms. You're not going to get, lately I've heard this term that you can have a free Alberta within a sovereign Canada, or you can use our passport. No, that's not going to happen. You would have to come up with your own government, your own passport, your own central bank. There is no using of Canadian dollar. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It doesn't work like this. That's what the other side would like you to believe. Oh yeah, we'll just stay with this little apron string that's tied to Canada. No, if you decide to separate, then you go and separate. If you decide to leave, then you leave. And that's how it works. There's no having your cake and eat it too. It does not work like this. Border and immigration management. Separation would require Alberta to build border control, immigration services, customs, and potentially even a military from scratch, as I had mentioned before. So you would need your own border set up with the US, with the other provinces. You would have to have your own immigration services. You know, who gets into Alberta, who's allowed, who's not. You know, these separatists, you know, who would they allow to come in and who would they not allow to come in, right? You have to have your own customs and border patrols, military, as I've said before. You have to have your own police service. Do you have the tax base to be able to afford all of this? Do you think you would have the tax base to be able to afford all of these things from everything that I've mentioned so far? And let's not forget, you would have to get out of Canada Pension Plan and all other federal benefits that you do get. Okay, the new dental, CDCP, whatever. You would have to get out of all of that and set up all your own. Do you think you have enough tax base to be able to set up a new pension plan? Premier Daniel Smith constantly mentioned Alberta having their own pension plan. Do you really think you have the tax base set up to have your own pension plan and other federal services? And there's a lot of things that I haven't even mentioned. If I started mentioning everything, I'd be sitting here for an hour and a half going over all the services that you would have to set up on your own. National debt and assets. Alberta would need to negotiate a share of Canada's debt and assets, a process that would be politically charged and financially risky. Right now, Canada has national debt, and you would have to figure out how much of that is Alberta's debt. And negotiations for that would get very contentious, right? So you would have to carry some of your own debt. That's a big one. Strong cultural and historical ties. Shared identity. Alberta, while unique in culture and economy, shares history, values, and institutions with the rest of Canada. We are all together. We are one country, okay? Yes, every province has their own culture, history, but at the end of the day, we are all Canada. We love Alberta. We want Alberta to stay with Canada. You have unique culture, just like with Quebec. You have a unique culture that we want to be part of. We want you to be part of Canada and the rest of the provinces. We don't want you to leave. Better together. Canada's diversity is one of its strengths. Alberta's voice helps shape national policy, and leaving would mean giving up influence rather than gaining it. Okay? So once you leave, see what I'm saying? Once you leave, you have none of these. You're on your own. There's no thing like, okay, we're growing up and we gotta leave. And no, once you leave, you're on your own. And I'll tell you something. What's Alberta's biggest resource? It's oil. Oil. I mean, that's why the pipelines are being built. Saudi Arabia, they all know that oil is going to start declining. We all know that oil is going to start declining. The use of oil, fossil fuels. People are going towards electric cars. Everything is becoming electric. Okay? So as of 2030, the use of oil is going to slowly start declining. It is. That's just a thing. That's a thing. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. People would rather buy an electric car. 20 years ago, we had hardly any electric cars, and look at how many there are on the road today, right? And think about 5 to 10 years from now. And what's going to happen? Eventually, the use of oil, your main resource, starts declining. Once, maybe 2050, 2060, that's not that far away, 25, 30 years. Once the whole world starts declining the use of oil, then what? Right? And Saudi Arabia has far, far more oil resources, OPEC, in its entirety, OPEC, than Alberta does. So for Alberta, when this resource, their main resource, runs out, then what? You're landlocked. What's your other economy? Right? You really gotta think very hard long term, not only short term, but long term as well. So at the end of it, you can see, I've pointed out, there's economic risk and uncertainty, complex legal and constitutional barriers, national and global reputation, public division and social unrest, practical governance issues such as central banking, currency. You'd have to come up with your own currency. Strong cultural and historic ties. So, my view is, the other side is not going to say this. They're not going to give you any of these, right? Alberta should stay in Canada because unity brings strength. Stronger together. Together we stand, divided we fall. All fall. That includes Alberta. So unity brings strength. Remaining part of Canada ensures access to a strong national economy, shared infrastructure, interprovincial trade, federal support during economic downturns and emergencies, and a powerful voice on the world stage. Canada does have a powerful voice on the world stage. We're signing new deals every day with EU, with BRICS. We're moving forward and going to be probably signing a new deal with India, China, and other big countries as we want to get away from the US. But you still have a more powerful voice on world stage. You have a Canadian passport that's recognized around the world. It's safe. You would lose all of that. Separation would bring economic uncertainty, legal complications, and social division that would harm Albertans more than help them. That's my view, not the other side's view. And if anybody from the other side is watching this, we are a democracy. I have a right to present my side of the equation as well. You do your own podcasts and present your side. This is my side. This is my talk to all of people of Alberta, 60%, who want to stay in Canada. We want you to stay in Canada. We want you to be part of us. Just the same thing as Quebec. So please, my request to all of you, go to Elections Alberta website, sign the petition for a referendum. A referendum needs to be done. It needs 600,000 signatures. A referendum, that's not a lot, can be done online. Once a referendum is done, that would show Premier Danielle Smith that the majority of the Alberta population wants to stay in Canada. And that would shut this whole thing down, for now at least. And then, we can all move forward with a better future planning and a better future, not just for Alberta, but the rest of the Canada as well. We are stronger with you. Canada becomes weaker without you. And the same goes in reverse. Alberta is stronger with Canada and becomes weaker without Canada. Okay? If you have any comments about what I have said, please leave it in the comments. I would really appreciate that. And if you like what I said, please subscribe, and please share this with your friends. Turn on your notifications. It doesn't cost you anything. It's of tremendous help to me on this new channel that I've started. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.